So presumably, it will be a battle of two-time MVPs facing off at 2 o'clock on Sunday. And I don't know what you'll be doing, but you know what it is over here. It's Flock Gang. It's Flock What You Heard. And just in case you've been living under a rock, I'll break it down for you. We have the Baltimore Ravens hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. The defending champions will be traveling to Baltimore to take the crown in the AFC. Well, to fight for the crown, because I don't want to say they'll take it. That is definitely not the right choice of words here. But I have been worried about this team all year, right? Right now, I'm real nervous. When it comes down to this point in the season, we know what Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, what these guys represent over there. And even after a subpar regular season, 4,200 yards, 27 touchdowns, 14 interceptions for Patrick Mahomes. The offense as a whole was just under 22 points a game. They have seemed to find a little bit of their rhythm as of late since the postseason has begun. Now, that first game did come against Miami, who was banged up. They pretty much had to pick up waiver wire guys to fill out that roster. But Kansas City was able to capitalize, scoring 26 points that game. They do follow that performance up with a 27-point performance against Buffalo. And, as we know there as well, a lot of defensive injuries from start to finish for Buffalo. But Kansas City was able to take advantage of the opportunity. And honestly, they probably did leave some points on the board that game. So, like I said, this team is really finding their groove right now. And we have seen an uptick in production offensively. But what they have not seen as of late is a defense like Baltimore. We had 7 guys on the season with 20-plus pressures on the quarterback. We may have the best linebacking duo with Roquan and Patrick Queen. I don't know if you've heard, but Marlon Humphrey, our CB1, was back at practice. So you pair him with Geno Stone, who has been amongst the league leaders in interceptions all year. Marcus Williams, who was in that same category last year for us as well. And then Kyle Hamilton, Pro Bowler, All-Pro, needs no explanation, right? We have some ball hawks in the back four, potentially the best secondary in the league. I think we're going to be able to provide a couple issues for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. I think the combination of those players, the front 7, and the scheme from McDonald is going to be a big factor in why I think Baltimore is going to be able to slow down 15 and Reid and take the W in this game. But before I let you go and make your case for Kansas City, I do want to touch on these coaching changes a little bit more because I did just mention McDonald. And we know I love my guy Wink, but he's pretty much a one-trick pony, and he's doing the same thing out there in New York. He is a blitz merchant. He was not one for adjustments. And against Patrick Mahomes, that's really not the formula for success. Since he's gotten to the league, he's been one of the best guys against the blitz, and that has not changed this season. So I think as beneficial as he was to that young core in Baltimore, it's probably best for us that we did move off of Wink. And the same goes for Greg Roman, because although we did establish that old school style, the 2000 Ravens style of the run game of Greg Roman, a little bit like Wink, there weren't a lot of adjustments now. There wasn't a lot of creativity either, and there weren't a lot of options. I understand we had to rely a lot on 89, and that really wasn't successful in the big games. I said a couple things that I do like about this game. I haven't mentioned Lamar's accuracy, his decision-making, his ball security has improved this year. The rushing attack, even though we don't have Greg Roman, is still tops in the league. So these are things that I do like for Baltimore. Before I get to some things that I don't like, why don't you tell me why you think KC might be poised for an upset?
This is a tough argument right here because, look, I have faith in the Ravens, but at the same time, it's still Mahomes, it's still Kelsey. I think arguably this is probably the best year that this defense has been for a Patrick Mahomes team. Look, I think the way they've built that defense over the past couple of years, 2 seasons at least, I just, they are. It's weird this year because this offense is obviously lacking some playmakers outside of Kelsey. So this defense has really had to be the backbone and step up each and every game for them to continue to have success, which they have done this year. And at the end of the day, when you have that happen, you still got Mahomes and Kelsey to deal with, which that is arguably the best quarterback to tight end / receiver duo in the league. So now if Kadarius Toney can get out of his own knucklehead ways, you can get a somewhat of a rushing attack against this Baltimore team. It's going to be a long day, I think, and it's going to be a close back and forth battle for the AFC Championship because you got Mahomes who he loves to play that backyard football, and then on the other side you got Lamar who's gonna scramble and make you chase him down if the guys are not open. So these two quarterbacks are gonna put on a show. I think they're both gonna be ready to go. This is gonna be a big heavyweight fight in the making, and the one to land the last blow is going to the big game. So for me, with Kansas City though, it's just I think they've had a little bit of adversity this year. This has been the first postseason where Mahomes has been on the road now 3 weeks in a row, or is it 2 weeks in a row? I can't remember, but yeah. So obviously, his first road playoff game in his career has been this year. Look, if they've come a long ways from, and not necessarily in a good way, but the days that they had Tyreek and Kelsey, I mean, Mahomes throwing the rock to those two, that was just the most lethal offense. But now you take Tyreek out of the equation and it's just Kelsey. That's scary because, like you said, Baltimore's got probably arguably the best linebacking duo in the league, and covering the middle against a guy like Kelsey. In my eyes, it shouldn't be that. I mean, it's going to be tough because Kelsey's Kelsey, but at the end of the day, to have those two guys manning the middle of the field with Kelsey, running his route, you take Kelsey away, you're going to see a lot of Mahomes scrambling and doing his backyard football tricks because he's going to be trying to make something happen when it's not there. So then another negative of Kansas City, where it makes it hard to argue for them, is just how vulnerable this defense has been lately to the run game, and that scares me because if Lamar and company can get the run game going, and I think the way Baltimore and Lamar need to go into this game with the game plan, try to establish that run game early and often, and just play possession football. Keep Mahomes and Kelsey on the sideline, and just run the clock as best you can, because that will make the game so much easier for Baltimore. You don't need a high scoring affair in this one. You really don't. And I don't think, if I had to guess, I'm gonna say it's gonna be on the lower side of things with scoring, just because I think Baltimore is that type of team where they can control their own destiny. So as long as they're not fumbling the bag and getting in their own way. So for me, this is a really tough one to argue because I've said it all year long from the jump after they lost that first game of the year to Detroit. This is not the same Kansas City team we were used to seeing the previous years. So while I'm trying to do my best to make a case for them, I just, in my heart of hearts, I can't, because it's just been that type of year for them, and they've regressed, bro. It's very hard to not see.
I feel you. This was yeah. I mean, I agree with you. There are different ways to win, but you don't want to play with fire, not against this team. And as good as Baltimore's defense has been, we are susceptible to having that rushing attack gash us. It has happened a couple times. The numbers may not show it because we've won on average, I think, by 14 points or something like that this year. So teams are abandoning the run against us. But Pacheco is probably top 3 hardest runners in the league. Now, we have some good tacklers out there, but that is going to be an X factor in this game. Obviously, you mentioned the Houston game earlier. The fact that Lamar had to do so much in that game worries the hell out of me, because that is a good up-and-coming defense, but they are young and they are middle of the pack. Kansas City was ranked 2 in the regular season. Say what you want about the game against Buffalo. Say what you want against the opponent in Miami, given the circumstances. But I have faith in this Kansas City defense to make life very difficult for the Ravens. I was very concerned watching that game, wondering why no receivers could get open against Houston. And I think Kansas City has 2 really good defensive backs on the outside. In the past, our weapons were Mark Andrews, who was overutilized, and then you pair him with the Marquise Brown or Willie Snead. Our weapons are better now, but our top 2, I mean, Odell and Zay, they might not be better than Snead and Brown, but we do have more depth at the position. So instead of having 2 top guys like that, we have 4 guys that are all similar skill sets. And I think that might actually be the difference in the game. Lamar can spread the ball out a little more, but in 16 games, this is what worries me. In the postseason for Patrick Mahomes, what is it? 4,500 yards, 38 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Those are MVP numbers. But this is in the postseason against the hardest competition. And we know, like you said, these are his first 2 road games in the playoffs. We know how cold Kansas City gets. He's not playing in easy weather. So this is a guy I've not counted out all season. And it just so happens, he's here playing my team to get to the Super
No,
Bowl. I'm taking Baltimore 100%. But this is the only guy in the league that makes me want to second that decision at this point in the season.
no, I hear you. Like I have to go with Baltimore as well at the end of the day. But you know what? It also makes me nervous. Not a whole lot, but just a little bit, just because you guys have been doing so well as of late, especially with him out of the lineup. Is if Mark Andrews comes back, does Lamar go back to targeting him, all the time, and that kind of fucking with the game plan, that you guys have been on, and just messing with the mojo a little bit. I'm not saying that's it's just it's not a big thing. It's just one of those little things you kind of think about, because I obviously I think Andrews is right up there with Kelsey as one of the best in the league at that position, but it's been a big safety blanket for Lamar, and he's kind of looked towards him, a little too much in certain points in games where he misses an open guy or two on the outside, whether it be Zay Flowers or Odell. And then it's not a it's not one of those things where it happens all the time. It's just kind of he knows what he has in Mark Andrews, so he really likes to look that way. So I'm not gonna say, and I'm just kind of I'm reaching with this a little bit, but it's one of those things you kind of think about in the back of your head, like, damn, likely he's been doing well. I mean, everything has been ever since Mark Andrews has been out of the lineup, things have been flowing with this team.
I can't lie to you. I've thought about it too. I thought about it last week when they said he was back at practice, because in the past, Lamar has been very reliant on 89 by scheme and by necessity. This year, he doesn't have to be, and he's
Mm-hmm.
seen that Isaiah Likely and the rest of the guys can step up. Uh, even Nelson Aguilar, maybe not so much Rashad Bateman yet, but hey,
And that's
you
the
still
other
got time
side
to
of
prove
things.
yourself, Seven.
But see, that's the other side of things too, where I'm kind of reaching with that. On the other side of things, you throw 89 back in there, and if he is close to full health, well, goddamn, if Lamar has opened his eyes to what he has with everyone else without Mark Andrews, you throw this guy back in the mix. Now you really got a super MVP quarterback who's gonna make plays and just make you pay. So this is gonna be a crazy game, bro.
Yeah, I can't wait. You mentioned to me if I like if it's the early game or not, and you mentioned a point to me that I wasn't even considering. But if we do lose and then happen to watch the NFC Championship afterwards, I don't know, man. I
It
really
won't
don't
be
know how I'll be
enjoyable.
reacting to it, bro. I'll probably just be in shock the whole time, and it won't hit me
But
until
yeah.
later that night or the next day.
That's what it's gonna be. You're gonna be trying to go to bed that Sunday night, getting ready for work in the morning, or getting ready to go to bed, and you got work early in the morning, and it's like I ain't gonna be able to sleep because I'm replaying this game in my head and thinking what could we have done, what could we have done, and then you got the other aspect of it's a conspiracy, obviously, but that video I showed you, or saying you already had saw,
Mhm.
with the referee they chose to put in the AFC Championship. I didn't really listen to it closely. I just thought a couple of, things were interesting where most of the time these refs are throwing flags and penalties on the opposing team, but that's not the case with this guy. He leans towards more so the home team. And that doesn't bode well for that. That kind of makes you think about the conspiracy theory with the NFL if it's rigged or not, because you got Mahomes coming in as the road underdog, and if that's the case, it's leaning towards the Kansas City, side of things. So it's just funny to think about when you talk about these refs. Look, these refs are not perfect. We complain about them a lot throughout the course of the year with bad calls, no calls, roughing the passers. And I expect a few bad calls this game. It, in both games on Sunday, I expect bad calls or missed calls. It's just that's the nature of it. But these playoff crews usually are better than majority of the crews because obviously they're handpicked based on performance throughout the regular season. so you get the better end of things with referees in the playoffs. Especially championship weekend, Super Bowl weekend. So, like I said, it'll be interesting to see. But I'm really excited about this game. I think it's a great way to start off Sunday, being the first game. I think I would have liked it to be the second game if I had the choice, but I understand why they did it because it's an East Coast game compared to a West Coast game. So that makes sense. But at the end of the day, I think both games are going to go crazy.
Yeah, you follow all the NFL pages and you see the homemade videos of people
They
talking
so
about,
badly want it to be rigged, bro.
yeah, the league is conspiring for the Chiefs all season. You've seen it every other week, every time they win. Man, you never know, bro. You do start to think about it after a certain point in time. And if we do end up losing this game, it'll be 100% grief, 51% just because we lost, 49% because I got to see Taylor Swift for a whole nother 2 weeks. All on my
Yeah.
social media. That is going to be the worst part about it.
Oh man, the Swifties are in full force.
But low key, I just thought about it while we were talking. These 4 teams that are playing probably have the 4 best tight ends in the league, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, you're right. I agree. It's hard to argue that. And this, I mean, this Sam Laporta dude, like, he's gonna be a freak for the longest time, bro. As long as he stays healthy. I mean, this dude, he's gonna jump. I mean, the way he's had his rookie year go, he's talking already Andrews, Kelsey tight ends. Like, it's that's why. I mean, it's to me, tight end is so crucial to have like a good one in your lineup because that opens up so many more things in your offense. If you don't have a tight end that you can rely on and who's only a run blocker or doesn't do much in the pass game, your offense is going to struggle in this league. It's pretty, pretty tough. So.
I agree. Do you want to transition over to this NFC game?
Yeah, let's do it.
You want to start us off with who you think is going to
Well, let's
win?
see. This is look. So obviously, I've been on the 49ers train since as late as last year. When I was picking them when they went on their run. This year, I felt even more confident, but I'm struggling because I feel like after the way last week's gone and the end of the season's gone, it's kind of like Detroit and San Fran are switching spots on the end of like the momentum train. You know what I mean? Like San Fran is kind of hitting a wall. They're kind of going back to their ways in the playoffs of kind of not playing up to par and playing what we're used to in the regular season. Whereas Detroit, started off fast, strong. Then they kind of hit a few bumps in the road in the middle of the stretch of the season. Started to come back on in the end of the season, and now we've gotten into the playoffs, and they're firing on all cylinders. So, look, I think Detroit is the NFC team in this game to be feared the most. If I had to put money on it and make a pick, I'm picking Detroit. But at the end of the day, we are going to San Francisco in this one. That's a tough place to play. And look, Detroit is winning this game if there's no Debo in the lineup. So that is the biggest thing for me. Because that dude, obviously you got McCaffrey, you got Purdy who's handling, managing the offense very well, but you got Kittle. But Debo's kind of that Swiss Army knife that makes things go. Like he's your bread and butter. And you got a very tough defense in San Francisco, which I think can give Detroit's offense a lot of fit. I mean, Detroit's defense, while we have kind of nitpicked them throughout the year quite often, they've been playing actually pretty solid football as of late. And having CJ Gardner-Johnson in the lineup is a major boost to that secondary.
You come around on CJ then.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a CJ hater. I just think, like he talks a lot of crap, and I like to kind of go at him for that. But it's one of those years where don't know. Like I said, I don't have ill will towards Detroit. I think you get a lot of Detroit fans this year though coming out of the woodwork. They've been quiet for a long time, so they'd be talking a
Oh,
lot of nonsense.
a Detroit
So,
Baltimore Super Bowl would be the hoodest thing on television, and I need to see.
so I mean, like, look, I really feel like things are leaning towards this Detroit team going to the Super Bowl and just having that special magical season. You know, even if they fall short in the big game, they at least got there. And this franchise is starved. I mean, look at the past two games in the playoffs. How loud and rocking that Ford Field is. I mean, that's like a college atmosphere. Like that was the best atmosphere throughout the whole playoffs to watch on TV.
I agree. You want to
So
talk? Go ahead.
uh, I just think they have so much momentum, and they are starving for success and to get to the big dance after all these years of struggle and misery. But you gotta slay the beast in San Francisco. They are the one seed. They've had a great year, but like I said, San Fran's got uh, a big hill to climb if there's no Debo.
So I just thought about this too. If you want to talk about scripting this shit out, obviously KC won the chip last year, so they start the
Hmm.
season with their Thursday night football game. You reminded us earlier who they lost to, the Detroit Lions. How fitting would it be if the first game was the same as the last game?
I've seen a lot of that
Niggas
in the
got me
comments,
shook
bro.
right now.
A lot of people are saying a lot of people are saying let's start the year or let's end the year how we started it.
Oh my goodness. I didn't even think about that till right now.
Yeah,
That
that's
is
crazy to think
scary.
about, bro. I mean, like this is like when you're a high seed in the playoffs, you make the playoffs as a high seed. That first game or two, you're a little nervous. You're a little nervous. You got the butterflies and stuff going into it, and but you win one, you win two, but then this weekend is the nerves are for real.
This is the big one. Yeah, for sure.
Like you're not sleeping or eating the night before. Like you're waking up early because you can't sleep. Like you got your jersey on at 7, 8 a.m. like ready to go. And like 8 hours before
Yeah.
kickoff, and I mean, dude, like this is the like obviously you got the Super Bowl in 2 weeks, but the AFC NFC Championship weekend, bro, that is. And if your team's in it, like your week is ruined. The next 2 weeks are ruined if you lose.
This is the one because it's been a grind for 20 straight weeks, damn near at this point. If you make it to the Super Bowl, it's Pro Bowl next week. No, ain't nobody talking about you. You get to take
Yep.
a little break, travel to wherever the site is of the game, and you get to chill for a little bit. Yeah. But this one right here, you've been in playoff mode for 4 or 5 weeks, most of these teams. So this is when the pressure starts building up. And
Yep.
both these quarterbacks, I don't know how they're going to deal with that type of pressure this week.
Yeah,
But
and I think the thing about so I like I think Stanford has rightfully the upper hand being at home against Detroit.
yeah, who
Even
did you
if
pick, by the
Devo,
way?
well, I'm picking Detroit. I am picking Detroit, but because I'm going, I'm going. I think I'm playing into this magical season for Detroit. Uh, I want San Fran to win. Like, don't get me wrong. I just don't see it. There's like Dan Campbell and this team is gonna be so fired up, bro. Like they are going to be fired up. And with or without Debo, though, I think San Fran is gonna give Detroit a lot of fits with their O line versus Detroit's D line. If San Fran can get McCaffrey going in the running game, it's gonna be a long day for Detroit.
Debo is not their best player, but he probably is their most important and most versatile offensive
He Swiss
player.
Army knife. Swiss Army knife. He does it all.
Yeah, so without him,
I mean, he opens up Shanahan's playbook so much.
yep. And we'll talk about it in a little bit, but I kind of feel about Purdy how I do about Dak. If all of his weapons aren't there, you better hold on to your fucking seatbelt.
Well, you saw what happened in Minnesota Monday Night Football in October with all his weapons, bro. Like it was a rough night for him, and that's what and you see him last week at home against Green Bay. Obviously, Green Bay had a nice end of the season, getting better week after week, and obviously they're going to be a problem going forward since they're the youngest team in the NFL. But you see San Fran struggle a lot in these type of games when you get against better teams. It's just obviously they have Dallas's numbers. That's a whole different story. Dallas is a fraud. But when you get San Fran against these better teams who are going to go blow for blow for you and haymaker after haymaker with you, like they kind of struggle. And this is a game where this is going to say a lot about Brock Purdy.
For sure. For me, I can appreciate how both of these teams were built, and that's from the inside out. So
Yep.
I'd like to start in the trenches. San Francisco, for the better part of 2 decades, has had a good to very good offensive line, going back to Joe Staley and the boys. If we rank all 8 units, not counting special teams, Detroit by far has the worst unit, and that is their defense.
Yep.
Now, they do have playmakers, potential stars, and superstars in the making. You mentioned C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Brian Branch, and then obviously Aiden Hutchinson. I think getting a rushing mate back in Houston is going to be beneficial for Detroit to try and pull off this upset. 16 games this season. Aiden Hutchinson has 5+ pressures on the quarterback, 9 sacks in his last 5 games. So him being on the
Monster.
opposite side of Trent Williams, I
That's
think
gonna be
that's going to
it.
be one of the X factors in this game. And
It
it's not
is.
this year, and it might not be this year or next year, but there's probably a future. There's probably a DPOY in this guy's future. And
For sure.
it's going to be a
I
beautiful
mean,
day when it comes.
the
Because this
past
mother,
2 games in the playoffs, bro, like he's been just a man child out there, just fucking tearing shit up. Like no one. I mean, there was a couple times last game where he just went untouched, and I was mind boggled how you could not scheme for him every play. It was
no,
wild.
you have to account for him, and that's why I think Kittle's going to play a big part. We can talk about what Detroit did at tight end as well, adding Zach Ertz a little bit, and I think that's partially for the pass blocking and protecting Jared Goff from that defensive line in San
Yep.
Francisco. But Kittle's probably going to be on that right side a lot, opposite of Trent Williams, getting a little chip on Aiden Hutchinson. So, I mean, I have faith in Shanahan scheming up something to not make this guy obsolete, but to definitely give him a quiet day, production wise.
Right.
But to your Purdy point and to my Hutchinson point, I think that is going to be a big factor for Purdy. And then the Debo point as well, not having all of his weapons. He's not necessarily a one-read guy, but if something just isn't quite the way they practice it in the
Yeah.
offseason, it just seems like it's not quite right for Purdy. And you mentioned it in that 3-game skid when Debo and the guys weren't healthy. That's what
Yep.
it was, a 3-game shit skid. So he is in the MVP conversation. It's whatever. But like I mentioned already, the Ayuk and Kittle combination with no Debo was similar to the old Greg Roman combination with Hollywood and
Yeah.
Andrews. So we've seen the limitations on the offense. Now the difference is obviously you do have Christian McCaffrey, which is a guy that we didn't have during that time, but we did have a Lamar Jackson. So do with that what you will. San Francisco's D line, full of talent, superstars, stars, role players, depth. I don't know how they have the cap room for it. Like I said, I'm going to call some people. Adam Schefter's supposed to be hitting me this weekend. I got a documentary coming out. We'll figure it out. Don't worry. But Detroit's offensive line might be the best in the league, led by Penei Sewell and the boys.
Yep.
Now I mentioned Zach Ertz. That's going to be, partially to help that that pass rush if he is even activated for this week. But I think this is going to be the key matchup of the game right here. This D line versus this O line. How are we feeling about that matchup in particular?
Oh, it's gonna be. I think Detroit's O line. That's what makes that offense go, bro. I mean, especially in the run game, they move bodies. Like between Montgomery and Gibbs, that's a lethal 1-2 punch behind that O line. I mean,
That's what I like about the O line. They are versatile. I mean, they did give up 5 sacks in these first 2 playoff
yep.
games, but they are a good passing O line. And then, like you mentioned, they're not afraid to get dirty either, and they got 2 guys that can tote the rock. So
Right.
they
And
can keep San Francisco on the sideline.
I just, and that's they're going up against, no slouch in San Fran's defense, and that's what worries me about this game. It's with Jared Goff. What Goff are we going to get this week against a top-notch defense? I mean, this defense is much better than the last two they played. So,
no question.
And Goff has that tendency. I just, when I see this Detroit team, if there's one downfall, he is that weak link that puts them in those positions where he turns the ball over or makes poor choices with the ball in his hands. And that's what kind of sinks this team in certain games this season. And if they lose, I have a feeling it's going to be on Goff's shoulders.
I'm kind of feeling the same way for both teams. If they lose, it's going to be on that quarterback not playing up to his potential or having one of those bonehead mistakes or meltdowns that we are privy to seeing from these guys. Fortunately for Goff, I know he's going against a phenomenal defense, but he does have a legit number one. A guy that's in top 5 conversations now as wide receiver number 1 in Amon-Ra. Like we mentioned, Laporta probably is in top 5 conversations as a tight end. Your offensive line can keep you protected. You don't have any interceptions in the postseason, although you have thrown the ball to defenders. So hopefully you got that out of your system. But like you just mentioned, he hasn't seen a defense like this one yet. These guys are going to be able to scheme up something that could. We've seen it before. We've seen it in the Super Bowl. Bill Belichick was able to shut down the most highly powered offense in the league that year in the Los Angeles Rams. Held them to 3 points. So, I mean, this is a little different. Campbell is different than McVay.
And that's the other thing about this that kind of worries me with Detroit is this is going to be a game. This is to go to the big dance. So this is going to be a game where everyone's fired up, ready to go. There's a lot of emotions in play. And that's what worries me with Dan Campbell is will he make boneheaded decisions?
You know he will. The risk-taking is going to have them in position to win the game. There's going to be the reason they get blown out when they should have lost by 3 or 6. He's going to go for it around midfield when he shouldn't have. San Francisco's going to hit a bomb play, and he's going to do the same thing in the third quarter, and it's going to happen quick again. And they lost by 17 when it should have came down to the last possession. So it's going to go one of two ways for Dan Campbell because on the opposite side, Shanahan he's aggressive, but we have seen him lay off the gas pedal sometimes. But I do feel like Shanahan is going to keep being aggressive, but it's a controlled aggression, whereas Campbell's just like, rah. I just took 6 scoops of creatine. Who's coming with me? Shanahan's like, all right, yeah, I understand. I know we can get the 6 yards here, but let's play the long game here, So I think it's going to come down to that and quarterback play, which it's the NFL coaching the quarterback play. Who would have guessed?
Yeah, and if I had to, I think in this type of game with so much at stake, while I'm picking Detroit, I do give Shanahan the upper hand against Dan Campbell coaching. I just, he's got the experience. He's been there. I think he does a lot better under pressure, under duress in certain situations. This is going to be. I mean, think about how quickly Dan Campbell and company has built this team up into where they were at to where they're at now. Dan Campbell hasn't had a lot of. I mean, he hasn't had a lot of time though to grow as a coach. He's kind of been doing it on the fly, which that's for every coach, obviously, when you start out as a head coach. But this isn't like a 6-7 year process of building this team. This is 2-3 years. Like, boom, we're here. So he hasn't been in these pressure moments yet. With so much at stake, so he's gonna have to. This game, he's gonna grow a lot. Whether it be in a good way or bad way, but he's gonna learn a lot about himself and his coaching technique this weekend.
That's a good point because he got there and he was growing with the team. They started from Cubs and now their lines with their mains fully grown. Whereas some coaches do take over a situation that's already half built or almost fully built, like Harbaugh will in Los Angeles, or like my guy will in Atlanta. Those are teams that are ready to win the division now, or ready to compete for the division now. Whereas when Campbell took over Detroit, they were a 3-win team. So to have them where they are in 3 years, very impressive. And like we mentioned a couple episodes ago, it's only going to get better because more and more guys are going to come on and play for him. Being that he's a former player, plus the attitude, plus the success. I mean, hopefully Kwesi's taking notes, man.
He would hope so, bro. You would hope so, but I don't know. But I see. I just think if Dan Campbell wins this game, is able to come away with a win in this game, and gets to the Super Bowl, but say they lose the Super Bowl, they have so much. I mean, this team is built for so much success still in the next 4 or 5 years, maybe even further. I mean, that window is at least 4 or 5 years right now. Like
Goff's not
they're
even the
still there.
quarterback for the future.
No, and that's a scary thing, bro. Like they've built this thing very well, and they're only going to get better. And I think they have, because of this success since they've hired Dan Campbell, they have they have the blueprint now, and they know what the success tastes like. They're back in action with being amongst the best teams in the NFL. They're not going to want this feeling to go away anytime soon. So this is a whole new era in Detroit, and that's scary for us being in the North with them.
Similar to how Philly had it a couple years ago. They had Wentz, MVP conversations, gets hurt. Nick Foles steps in, they draft Jalen Hurts, and they don't really miss a beat. Detroit's kind of on that same path here if they can hit on the quarterback after Goff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really what it's going to come down to, because that decision could fuck up everything you built.
Yep, that's for sure, bro.
You have anything else on the Elite Eight or the Final Four? Excuse me.
No, I'm excited to come back next week and break these two games down, because I think we'll have a lot to speak on after we watch both these games.
As of now, Washington and Seattle have head coaching openings. As far as I know, both of our coordinators are still committed to Baltimore. That's what I love to see. So hopefully we're committed through the season. Hopefully we're committed for a Super Bowl run. And hopefully we're committed for a back-to-back, if you pay attention to those Super Bowl logos.
Man, I think yeah, Baltimore set up pretty nicely, bro. I especially with that defense. Man. But that AFC is gonna be a gauntlet.
It's gonna be a gauntlet, man. I think, yeah. Let's just keep it at that. I'm good here. If you're good to go,
I'm
get
good
out
to
of here.
go.
Enjoy these games this weekend. We appreciate y'all. Peace.